Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Applerouth's DMV High School Admission Testing 101. My name is Jenna Burke. I am a premium tutor here at Applerouth, as well as a tutor manager. And I am joined today by Pam Tedeschi of Tedeschi Educational Consulting and Matt Kiesner of Applerouth Education. And we are so excited to have you all here today. So first, just a quick introduction about Applerouth, our why, our reason for being here. We know that when you change students' self-beliefs, you change their lives, you change what they're capable of doing. So that's why we do what we do. And we're here to build skills for school and beyond. We have tutors who will help you with academic tutoring, as well as test prep and executive function coaching. And with me today are panelists, Pam Tedeschi of Tedeschi Educational Consulting. I've been so fortunate to get to work with Pam for a great many years now. Pam is the president of Tedeschi Educational Consulting, a school admissions consulting firm. She's also a certified educational planner and the executive secretary of CEP. She's a former member of the IECA board of directors. That's for independent educational consultants. She's a former teacher, department head, and school director, and has counseled hundreds of families on private school admissions for the district, Maryland, and Virginia, as well as boarding school admissions. I'm so honored to have Pam here today. She is a font of knowledge. And joining her is Matt Kiesner of Applerouth Education. He's spent 12 years as a premium tutor at Applerouth following a career in academia. He is one of our fantastic instructional designers who create our beautiful materials that we are so honored to share with students. He's among the top requested tutors at Applerouth of all time, and he is our resident high school admissions test expert. So I've tapped him to join us here today.
Happy to be here.
All right, so first I've got a quick poll for those of you joining us from home, just to see, who you are, who you're interested in hearing about. So just, feel free to enter that in the poll. Obviously, for those of you viewing later, you are very welcome to contact us and let us know what you're interested in later. And then Pam will be taking us on a guide through schools and timelines for applying. It is more than a 1-month process, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm really excited to have her talk to us about that. Matt will take us through the ABCs of testing, and then we'll get to your questions. All right, so Pam, please take it away. Let us know what an IEC does.
Thank you, Jenna. Hi, my name is Pam Tedeschi, and I'm an educational consultant, and I'd like to thank Applerouth for inviting me to be part of this event. In nearly 24 years of consulting, I've worked with numerous students applying to both day and boarding schools for middle and high school, and also elementary school. As an educational consultant, I'm a skilled professional who provides counseling to help students and families choose a school that is a good personal match. A school that will foster academic and social growth, provide my students and their families with individual attention and a firsthand knowledge of the schools. Some of the benefits of hiring an educational consultant to help with the process is a secure feeling that you are hiring a knowledgeable, experienced educator who understands the subtle differences between schools. There are many independent school options in the DC metropolitan area and wonderful boarding options across the country. I personalize the application process and help you determine the high school or high schools that would be a good fit for your child or for you. The second benefit is time. Visiting schools can take a lot of time. And every year I visit many boarding schools and day schools. And even during the pandemic, I was doing a lot of virtual tours. Now I'm able to go back on campuses. And during the visits, I meet with teachers, learning specialists, college counselors, athletic coaches, students, administrators, and department heads to learn as much as I can about the schools. Often I'll eat a meal there. I want to find out who is best served at a particular school. I also keep up with my clients who are at school, various schools, and I can learn a lot that way as well. I help you narrow your choices by decreasing the amount of time spent on visiting schools that aren't appropriate. I can introduce you to the perfect school that you may not know. I also give my clients all the time they need to ask questions. I help my clients stay organized throughout the process. I'm a very organized person. I also develop a special relationship with each family to help make the application process less stressful and more enjoyable. And I help prepare for visits, interviews, and can brainstorm some essay ideas. I take pressures off the application process and give the students and parents confidence that they've done everything possible in the process. And a lot of times the high school student, people applying to high school would rather talk to an outsider than their parents about the application process. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today are the best time to apply to schools, what to look for when visiting a school, types of schools, applying to independent schools. And I also have provided a timeline for the admissions that we'll discuss later, and we'll be glad to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Once you apply out or change schools, sometimes you have no control. One person gets a new job in the state or out of the country, and you have to move your child. If you have a choice of when to move your child and the child's happy and learning and successful, let them complete that middle school year. The last year often has special opportunities and programs. The child loves being in that graduating middle school class and sees the program through to the end, having a chance to hone those final skills, social skills, leadership skills, and get the final concepts that they're teaching. On the other hand, if your child isn't thriving in their school and the school doesn't seem to be a good fit, you need to be his or her advocate and look for a place you can thrive. I believe there is an appropriate school for every child. You just need to do your research and be open to different possibilities. Most schools have middle school places for 6th and 7th graders. All schools add students or start at 9th grade. Boarding schools usually take several 10th graders as well. And once in a while, there's spaces at 8th grade or 11th grade. Most schools don't take rising seniors. Some students do better entering in a big class of 9th graders. Others, it won't matter if there's only a couple of new students. You can also apply to a junior boarding school that goes through the end of 9th grade, and students often start at 8th grade. And then there are seniors who apply to boarding schools for a postgraduate year before college. This could make them more competitive and mature for the college process. They could also be taking advanced classes, but have more supervision than they would in a college. There are many different things you want to look for when looking at schools. You want to look at how many adults per child and the class size. Look at the teacher qualifications. Not all independent school teachers are certified. Many have majored in many different subjects and are experts in that area. This is especially true in high school. What type of academic backgrounds do they have? Do they have a background in teaching students that may have attention deficit disorder or learning disabilities, or students who are highly gifted? How many classes do they teach? What are their other responsibilities? What's the attrition rate of the teachers? What's the longevity? What professional opportunities are there for teachers? Are there workshops or summer classes on new research that are encouraged? Does the school bring speakers on important topics for the faculty? Are the teachers enthusiastic? Do they get along well with each other? And look at the physical space, both indoors and outdoors. Safety is important in both areas. Is the school accessible to physically handicapped? Because injuries can happen when the students play sports. How is your child going to get around? Do they have an elevator? Are the classrooms comfortable? Are they spacious, inviting, organized? Is the student artwork displayed? Is the student's written work displayed? Look at the furniture and technology. Is it appropriate for that age of child? Are the classrooms, how are they set up? Are there rows or there tables, or maybe a Harkness table where students can talk and interact more readily? Are there cushions or standing desks or other types of flexible seating? Are there movable chairs and desks? Then technology. If the school has the latest technology, have they trained the teachers on how to use it? I once had a student say that his school had many smart boards, but the teachers didn't really know how to use them. How does the school teach internet safety? Does each child have their own school-issued laptop or iPad? If it's a boarding school, is the internet access all night or is it turned off? What's the school phone policy? Look at the food. Are there assigned seating at lunch or some advisory lunches? Does everyone in the cafeteria look like they're included in the groups at the table? How are food allergies accommodated? The food healthy? Are there choices? Look at the diversity in both the student body and the faculty. With the faculty, also look at the number of males and females, the age of the teachers. Are there different types of diversity, religious, racial, foreign-born? And diversity means different things in different schools, depending on the location. What about sexual orientation or students exploring gender identity? How are the bathrooms set up? Do trans students live together in boarding schools? What sports do they have that they can join? And then academics. What foreign languages does the school offer? They have honors, IB classes, STEM classes, AP classes. Does their math program continue after calculus? What electives are offered? Students complete a capstone project senior year. What graduation requirements are there? When does college counseling start? How many students does each college counselor work with? And then special programs in the arts could include an artist in residence, special drama productions, a design technology class, chorus, band, orchestra, jazz band. They have a recording studio, a stage, black box theater, dark room. And then what other professionals are in the school? How many school counselors are at the school? Do they meet with the whole class? How many college counselors do they have? How many learning specialists do they have? What's their job and background? Do the learning specialists sit on an admissions committee, help the teachers, have small pull-out groups for extra help or enrichment? Is there extra reading, writing, or math help if the child should need it? Who provides it? Can outside tutors come in and work with students during the school day? And in many independent schools, they can. And then community service, is the whole school involved? Are there several projects a year? Is there school focus on a particular area, such as the environment or homelessness? Is there a trip overseas or a project overseas? Is there a requirement for students to complete a number of hours before graduation? Is community service an alternative to sports after school for the non-athletic? And then social emotional. Every school has bullies, but how do they deal with them? Will incorporate practices like mindfulness? Is there a social emotional curriculum? Do they deal with these problems in an advisory group? How often does it meet? And then something I've thought of recently is, are there virtual options if there's snow days or your child is sick for a long period of time? Or what happens if there's another virus the school needs? And then location. If a day school is too far from your home or office, the student will spend a lot of valuable time in the car or the bus instead of playing or studying. Have to wake up earlier, and all your weekends will be spent driving to team gatherings near the school. Is there a bus service? Once your child is admitted, a school will usually give you the name of families in your area for carpools. And then athletics, is PE required? How easy is it to make the team? Does the school have your child's sport? What are the sports requirements? Can an outside sport or team count for credit? Can another school activity such as play count for sport? Are there options like outdoors club, yoga club, or non-competitive options? Are there fields for various sports? Do they have a workout room, a dance studio, or athletic trainer? And what about after-school activities? What is offered? Student clubs, student government, special classes, maybe art enrichment? Are the clubs open to everyone or just from a certain grade? And do you have to join a club? Is there time each week devoted to clubs? And how easy is it to start a new club? And then you can also get a feel for the community by looking at the club list. And then school community, is it welcoming, flexible, size? What are the grade levels like? Governance, formal or informal? Is it religious or non-sectarian? Is transportation available? Opportunities or expectations for parent involvement? What kind of school spirit did they have? Will you and your child feel comfortable with the values and beliefs of the community? And then which schools do the graduates attend? There's usually a list on the website. What do the college counselors do to help? How familiar are they with a variety of schools? Are they able to help with art colleges or student athletes? And then what are the school's endowment, future plans, school accreditations, and memberships? Because we know during the pandemic, a lot of schools ended up closing. And then different types of schools. Public schools have magnet schools that you can apply for and focus on a certain area like science, communication, STEM, IB, the arts. Most of these are for high school students. There can be testing and other requirements, portfolios, and some use lotteries now. Then charter schools are in DC. They're not in Montgomery County or Fairfax County right now. They receive money from their district and must admit anyone at their space, but they have standards and focus. And some of them are really quite good. Entrance to the DC charter schools can be on a first come, first served. If there's too many applications, they'll use a lottery. The one thing that you should know is getting, just because they're getting public school funds, they have to admit everybody, which can make a large amount of range of abilities in a class. And then independent schools are all very different from each other. You need to find the best fit. If your child needs to be tutored several times a week to keep up with his peers, your child is not in the right school. The strong possibility that a child who needs to be tutored and is lagging too far behind their peers and needs this daily tutoring, he or she will become very anxious and lose a lot of self-esteem. And I see a lot of students like that. And some of the options that are available, there's special needs options in both independent and public schools. Determine eligibility in your public school, look at their website. And as we understand more about how children learn, special needs independent schools are opening. There are a variety of these for students with a variety of learning challenges. And then some mainstream schools can accommodate a few students with mild special needs. Some children just need a little support and may do well in a mainstream setting. Others need a more specialized school and may be able to transition later on. And most independent schools have a learning center. How many students are involved and how much service can they give. There's Montessori school, which has a set curriculum, and some of the high schools use parts of the Montessori philosophy, which uses a lot of manipulatives. There's also Waldorf school, which has a teaching methodology, and children and teachers often stay together for several years. It's very low tech. They have specialized main lessons that go for several weeks, and each student completes their own books for that unit. Traditional schools are more formal and structured and use more traditional teaching methods. Students might sit in rows, take notes during a lecture. And progressive schools are more flexible. Students may all be doing different lessons and moving around the room. They may not be sitting at desks, and they often don't use textbooks. They may have a lot of project-based learning. Most schools are a combination between the two. There are religious schools that may belong to a certain parish, many Catholic schools, or they may be independent. Students of that religion are often given priority. Single-sex schools. These schools have teachers who really enjoy teaching and understand the students of one sex. Single-sex schools can give athletic boys the programs they want and attract the best coaches. Girls' schools often help quieter girls find their voice, feel more confident in math and science. Students often say it's easier for them to be themselves and focus in a single-sex class. Single-sex schools can be especially helpful during middle school years. There are schools that end at 8th grade and others that start in middle or high school. School that focuses on a particular age has all the resources for that age. Some of the larger independent schools have more than one campus or different buildings to separate the age. And sometimes there are advantages to public schools. They're in your neighborhood, there's no tuition, there's nearby friends, they can be diverse. They might have good programs for special needs or for gifted and talented and magnet programs. You need to look at the application process for the year if you're going to apply to a magnet program, since the requirements can change. Some of the disadvantages of a public school, the classes are very large. There's less art, music, and PE. They have to accept everyone, so a teacher can be teaching many different ability levels. They also do less writing. And it can be harder to get leadership roles or a place on the sports team unless your child is really talented and can advocate for themselves. School system websites have information about boundaries and lotteries for out-of-bounds students and age cutoffs. Take a tour or set up an appointment. And then independent school advantages, usually smaller classes, more adult engagement, more opportunities for leadership or to be on a sports team or in the school play. There's selectivity, less bureaucracy and red tape, and less testing once the child is admitted. There's also an opportunity to attend a religious school. Independent schools serve students with superior abilities, students with special needs, and students who have untapped potential. Some prefer being in a single-sex environment or do better in a smaller environment. And then if you start in a public school, how easy is it to switch to an independent school? If your child's doing well in a public school, but you feel they do better in an independent school, you should start to tour the schools and apply wisely. Independent schools have grades where they will add a class. And even if they don't add a class, when you want your child to enter, there might be openings through attrition. The years they do not expand classes, there will be less applicants. So the odds of being admitted may be the same or better. And by middle or high school, your child really needs to be invested in the process. Get your child excited and involved. You should let them explore websites, attend open houses, maybe a sporting event or a school festival or performance, and try to assure the child he will not lose current friends, but gain new friends. They can still participate on their current teams and scouting groups. Many students in DC area will enter independent schools after elementary school or after middle school ends. Even if they attend their local middle or high school, the school is so big, they may not have many of their friends in their classes. If they've done well in public school and you apply wisely, they should be admitted to an. There are many places at 6th grade, 7th grade, and 9th grade. Some schools start at 6th grade. There are other schools that start at high school. And then the admission process. I've provided a timeline to help you organize yourself. This process has changed since the beginning of the pandemic and continues to change each year. But in April and June, you can get ready for the process by researching schools, signing up for a camp at the school you're targeting. If there's schools your child needs to address before in a certain area, he or she can get some help, or if there's something they're passionate about, look for a summer program that could work and bring out their passion. Now is the best time to start on the process, meet with a consultant, help you narrow your school search, and become a member of your child's team to help with admission and organize the process. Although I do see students all summer long and sometimes even a week before the deadlines approach in January. Your child should have free time, but also be involved in some activities during the summer: sports, a general camp, arts, academics if needed, some STEM, scouts, maybe even get a part-time job with childcare or lawn mowing or an internship. And then finish any reading or math your child has to do for the fall if they're assigned anything. And start to prep for the SSAT, the ISEE, or the HSPT with Applerouth. Take a practice test. And I do flex testing for the SSAT all summer long in my office. And if you take a test before August 1st, it doesn't count towards taking the one flex test you can take during the admission year. Late August to early September, the application season starts to open. Sign up for tours early. Check websites to know what's required so you can start to compile everything. If essays are up, your student may want to brainstorm. And then October through December, visit the schools. Visit as many schools as you have time, but apply wisely. Schools have open houses on the weekend. You can meet some of the administrators and teachers and parents. They also have small group or individual tours during the week where you can see the classes in action. Prep for and take any testing that's needed. Then how many applications should you complete? If you apply wisely, you shouldn't apply to more than 5 schools. This is the time to look at public magnets and charters also if you have them. If your public school is a good option, you may wish to apply to fewer schools. Never apply to a school that if your child was admitted, you would not send them because you like the public. DC also has charter school options that can be done by lottery. Out of district schools are also done by lottery in DC. Your child doesn't have to visit. The application process is a little easier. Just be aware of the deadlines. There may be essays, and you can always apply to the charter schools you like, or send your child to another public school, even if accepted in an independent school. If you live in DC, you can pay to send your child to a school in Montgomery County if there is room in the school you want. They also have transfer process for students in the county if you want to attend a different school. You have to look on the web. If you visit a school you could not see your child attending, or a school where you feel they won't be accepted, don't apply. If your child do better in a smaller school, then don't apply to a huge competitive school. Be flexible when looking at schools. If the perfect school for your child is a longer drive than you like, you may realize that your child will only attend for a few years, or you can consider moving. Parents move all the time for different public schools too. Look at your child now. What do they need? And what passions do they have? Don't accept one school this year and then reapply to another school next year. This is too many changes in a short time. Your team needs some continuity. Let your team have the benefit of all that his new school offers and give him a chance to develop deep friendships and be successful at the new school. Start on the applications as you decide to apply. Don't wait till the last minute or you're going to feel rushed. Set up testing for your child if needed. And for schools application, the process usually consists of a tour, parent interview, a student interview and visit, testing, teacher recommendations, and a completed basic application that's usually online. There's often essays about your child too. Parent needs to complete. Older children applying for middle and high school usually have essays for their application. Usually need the current math and English teachers to write recommendations. Meet with those teachers or have your child meet with them and explain why you're applying for private school and if they help by writing a recommendation. Give the teacher plenty of time to do this. If you give them the request in early December, the recommendations are due in January, they'll have time. It also gives the teacher time to get to know your student. Any extra letters? Don't get letters from too many people on behalf of your child. Current parents who know the child and can write something on behalf of, the child, or a special teacher or coach who can ask something extra is fine. Too many letters makes the file too thick. If a lot of people want to write on your behalf, have one write and others can call the admissions office. If your child's especially talented in a sport or music or drama, you might send a very, very short video. Your child could also send in photos of their artwork if that's their talent. Most schools have slightly different deadlines. Keep track of them and make sure everything is completed on time or earlier. Some schools have rolling admissions. They'll take applications until the places are filled. Other schools use rolling admissions if they have spaces after the contracts. If you're not sure you want to apply with school with rolling admissions, you might wait until you have responses from the other school, but then you have to hope there's still spaces. For the parent interview, both parents should attend if possible. And what should you tell the schools? Be honest. Tell the schools about your child's strengths and if they have any needs. If a child knows what your child needs and can offer extra help or an extra challenge and accepts them, you know they'll be supported. You don't tell your child the school where your child may need some support and they get accepted. The school you choose may not be correct, and the child won't get the support and they won't feel good. You decide one school is your favorite, you can tell them it's your first choice, but then you have to attend if admitted. It's often better to go back in March and revisit all of the options. Never ask, and you'll be able to ask all the questions you didn't ask during the admission process. Never tell two schools they're your first choice. Make sure you keep appointments, be on time, keep your cell phone off, dress professionally, don't be eating or chewing gum or bringing Starbucks to the interview. Know the website and the printed information and refer to it when you can. If you ask a question that's been covered in the printed material, the director of admissions won't think that you know the school. Don't ask too many questions. You'll have plenty of time to ask those questions once your child is admitted. Make sure you listen carefully to the interviewer. If you have a few questions later, email or call the admission office with all your questions at once. Be organized throughout the process. Testing. Before the pandemic, many schools wanted standardized testing. Each year since the pandemic, the testing requirements have changed. Go to look at the websites to determine what is needed. Many schools do their own testing or assessments or give children the option of doing a project or writing an essay instead of testing. Some of the Montgomery County magnet schools have accepted the SSAT for testing the last few years. Other testing. If you've completed individual testing and the schools ask for it, you need to share it. Usually they want it from the last 2 or 3 years. If it's older than that and the child doesn't need new educational testing, you may not have to send it. Your child's made a lot of progress. You may want to get the child retested and send the new results. Make sure you tell the tester you want this for admission purposes and to see where your child falls academically. Testing that's less than 2 years old may help you get accommodations for the SSAT or the ISEE, or later on the ACT or other tests. And then preparing your school for the visit. Your child's also going to visit the schools. Spread them out so they're not all in 1 week. Make sure your child's healthy. Drive by the school and even perhaps attend a production or sporting event to learn more about the school and get your child excited. If your child who has a friend who attends the school, you can mention this and the child can talk to them about the school. Your child should dress like the students on the web in the view book to feel comfortable. They may attend classes and do an interview. Sometimes they have to complete some work during the visit. They usually shadow another child, and the visit might be a couple of hours or a morning or a full day, on occasion, even a 2-day visit. Boarding school sometimes will give you an opportunity to spend the night. Then in late January, beginning March, check the website to make sure that all the applications are complete. Between the time the applications are finished and letters are sent, it seems like an eternity. If there's something you need to tell the school, like you've decided it's your first choice, or you have a new report card to share, or your child just made a highly selective team, you can email it to the director of admission. If your child is mature, he or she can email the information with a nice note, which is often appreciated. Don't call and badger the admission office at this time. They're in meetings all the time. You might also sign up for a summer camp or a summer program at the school you're targeting. In March, you'll find out if they're accepted, go back for another visit to make sure it's a good fit. Now you can ask all the questions you were otherwise not able to ask. If you said a school was your first choice, send in the deposit now. If you're denied, later in the spring, set up an appointment to speak to the director of admissions. There may have been too many students that year, and they may urge you to apply another year. If you're waitlisted, some schools have very long wait lists. Others only waitlist a small number of students. If you're interested, send back the card or email saying, keep me on the list, but also write a follow-up letter thanking the school and saying you're continue to be interested, and add any new information that would help the applicant. Sometimes the wait list will move in the first couple of weeks. Some children are admitted to 2 schools. If your child is admitted to 2 schools, let the school you know that they're not going to attend as soon as possible so another child can be admitted off a wait list. Schools usually take a few extra students, so it may be a while before your child moves off a wait list, or they may not move. If you have a son and a girl decline the space, another girl will probably be taken from the wait list. Revisit all the schools where your child's been accepted. Then later in March to May, decide where your child will attend and put down that deposit. You can check the wait list now and later and see if it moves. If your child's not been accepted to a school, you may want to add some other schools with rolling admissions or revisit a public school. And then April to June, make sure that you attend welcome events at the new school with your child, and the bulk of tuition is usually due in June. Wait lists sometimes move now. During the summer, if the summer school has a summer program, your child can sign up for this session. This may help your child feel more comfortable in September. If there are special social activities for new students your child should attend. If your child plays a fall sport, make sure you know the practice schedule. And your child should sign up for an activity for the fall to get to know their classmates, either sport or drama production. Your child should attend any before school starts meetings with teachers or orientation for new students. And then in September, once the school year starts, get involved in your child's school. It helps them see that you feel the school is important. And then you can support your child in his new school and get to know the other parents. Make sure you and your child feel connected to the school community. People who feel connected are less likely to feel stressed. And once on a recent visit to a school, I saw on a classroom wall, the road to success is under construction still. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Well, thank you, Pam. I think we're going to do talk a little bit about some of the ins and outs of the test in here, and we'll do some questions at the end. First of all, it's important to recognize that students are often going to face test anxiety, especially when we're dealing with students who are in 5th grade or 8th grade. That this may be one of the first opportunities where like their score on this will be will really affect their future, right? And that no matter how much a parent supports, when it was time for testing, the parents have to be hands off. And I think it's important to recognize that and know that this can be stressful for students, and so the best ways to kind of deal with this is to acknowledge it, and then also get experience and recognize that like the more you know about a test, the less scary it can be. And so that part of what we're going to do today is kind of like this testing also be scary for for the parents to try to decode all these acronyms and different standards and try to kind of help make a better understanding of that. So we'll talk about the SSAT first. That is a test that is used to get into private schools, schools that are affiliated with the EMA enrollment and services, and EMA also does has sort of the equivalent of a common app that some schools use as part of the admissions process. There are 4 options to taking the SSAT, and I think it's important to kind of recognize all those. When the pandemic, they did switch to an at-home with the secure testing platform without that is offered most Saturdays and at least one Sunday per month and at different times to have it. If someone's on the West Coast, they don't have to get up at 6 a.m. to take a at-home test. The student would test on camera with on a device. It locks down the device so that they're very aware that students might want to have assistance, whether that be a calculator or a dictionary or the internet. And so the platform is pretty good at locking that down. And they actually use eye tracking software. So if a student was to look up at the ceiling for maybe just for pondering reasons, they'll typically get flagged and say, hey, keep your eyes either here or down at your paper. Another alternative is that there's computer-based testing at the Prometric centers. They are they're pretty common in most places. It's where a lot of adults take like GRE testing and things for grad school, and they can go in and take that. There's a paper-based Flex and Benchmark. As Pam said, she is a Flex test provider, and that can be scheduled whenever is works for Pam or the family. Hence the Flex. What's important is that the Flex can only be taken one time per school year, and as Pam was saying, that if a student was to take a Flex test before August, they actually could kind of do it as a trial on there in the summer. And then there's also just normal paper-based testing. It tends to be the second Saturday of the month, starting in October. And in terms of at the at-home and Prometric, you can take 2 of those per academic year. They actually used to be 3, so that's combined. And then Flex test is once. The Benchmark is if a school provides it, and that would be the school would purchase it. So if you're at a terminating 8th grade school, the school itself may buy a test for the students. And then the paper-based ones, you can do it 5 times, which is, I think, plenty. I really, between all those options, I hope that someone's not taking the test 8 times between the monthly Flex and at-home / Prometric. So lots of ways to take the SSAT. So here's our structure. It starts with an essay that's unscored. That essay is sent to the admissions office, and so it is part of the application. And I think as Pam mentioned, that sometimes they want essays from students, especially the older students. They can compare the essay that they know that they had prepared at home and was proofread by parents, and maybe more than that. They can, and then versus a student who's writing on a piece of paper or typing. And seeing that difference, right? And if they're, if one is very polished and the other one is, maybe not as polished, they can see that as, like that gives a little bit of a window in there. So it's not scored, but it definitely is important. And I would never encourage a student to take the essay frivolously. The quantitative is just math in there. Multiple choice questions, and they're covering a lot of number skills, some basic algebra, some geometry in there. The reading comprehension is little short passages and excerpts and multiple choice questions about the main ideas, vocabulary and context, author's tone, a little bit of rhetorical devices. There's verbal, and there's two kinds of questions on that. There's synonyms, where they basically give you a word and you have to choose the answer that is the direct synonym to that. And then there's the analogies, and these are words it's like good is to bad as, and then you have answer choice, so you have to match the same logical relationship. There's a second quantitative math section. It's the same as the first in terms of the type of questions. So there are two math sections, and then there will be an experimental section, which is just like a smattering of questions of different types, and that is also unscored. That is just student made to do that in order to get some the SSAT board to get feedback on there. So the scoring is a little interesting in the SSAT. The SSAT is one of the few tests that still exists to have a guessing penalty. Pretty much all the other tests have gotten rid of it. APs don't do it. SAT adopted almost 10 years ago. But if a student gets a question wrong, they lose a quarter point off their raw score. So one of the first things when I'm tutoring a student for SSAT, I have is a conversation about understanding that guessing penalty and understanding that it's okay to not answer everything. Because quite frankly, if you have a student, especially there's like the middle level test goes from it's as low as 5th grade up to 7th grade. And if you have a 5th grader, there is going to be math that they have not seen. But knowing that their score is going to be relative to other 5th graders. And so I've had students get into the high 90th percentiles, but then, we're nowhere close to having a perfect score, but they had strategic answering. And we're new to omit things versus guess away. So the students will receive a score. They'll have scaled scores, and then they will also have percentiles based on grade. They used to do grade and gender, and they've since just added grade total. So yeah, the scoring is a for middle, it's from 470 to 770, and then for upper level is 500 to 800. And make sure the middle level is students currently in 5th through 7th grade. Upper level is 8th grade and above, though it is mostly 8th graders who take it to get into high school. And so, but really, it's the percentiles what families, what schools care about. And that I would say that a lot of families are surprised when a student takes the test first, that they expect the percentile to be higher than what they receive. And it's important to recognize that this is not like a national ranking of all 8th graders. It's a ranking of 8th graders who are taking this test that are getting into highly selective specialized schools, and that most public school students are not taking it. Anyone who's in a K through 12 private program is not taking it. So it tends to be a very a pool of highly motivated applicants, and that to not think that, oh, my student gets all A's or equivalents and is in the advanced math, and so therefore should be in the 90th percentile. I think part of it is that this test is its own thing and it is not really taught in schools, and it really is a test to teach you how, it's asking if you're good at testing, I think, at its core, more than have you been exposed to key concepts in grade level. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind, because I do see percentile shock a lot with families I work with. So to get into the strategies, I mean, at its heart, it's a 20th century IQ test. And I think more so than any of the other tests that are that the students have to take, the questions are willfully tricky. There are trap answers. It is really seeing if you can deal with the puzzle on that. It's also it's the most advanced verbal test. The words that they use on both the reading section and on the verbal synonyms and analogies are gonna push a lot of students' vocabulary abilities. So studying vocabulary, learning Greek and Latin roots, and learning how to think in analogies, which are like they're not taught as much in school because there are reasons why that that they're based more on cultural bias than and who are you and where do what was your background then on like like being an equal playing field. The classic one is grayness to silo, which is like if you live in a rural area, that makes a lot more sense than if you live in an urban area, right? And that's a there is always sort of this background knowledge. But the best thing you do is to help a student improve vocabulary and improve exposure to that. And then the student should plan to test more than once on SSAT, and starting in October, and then planning on taking this test. 'Cause I do see people when it's getting towards end of January, February, trying to get a flex test schedule, trying to get a at-home test schedule to try to get it done. And it can be very stressful. But the good news is that here it's currently end of June, so we're in a point where if you start now, it's going to be a much easier process in the long term there. So we'll transition into ICE, and to in case you're wondering why we're talking about both of these, is some schools are affiliated with the SSAT, some schools are affiliated with ISE, some schools will accept both, but rather than to do the SAT ACT analog, where you can basically take either test, and most schools will see them, most colleges will see them as equivalent. On and in terms of independent and private schools, you do see that a lot of them are affiliated with only one or the other, and so it's important that as you're making that plan, looking at what schools you're applying to, seeing which one that they accept or which one they expect. So the IC also has some other options. They have an at-home test as well. It's very similar to the SSAT. You take it with an online proctor, on camera. There's also the Prometric, just like the SSAT. And then there's paper-based testing in select locations. And the reason is that the ICE does not have nationwide testing dates. They have certain schools will have a test date. And it's also important to recognize is that the opportunities to take the ISE are far fewer than the SSAT. They have 3 testing seasons, a fall, winter, and spring, and a student could take that test once per season, and that's includes any of those 3 options: at home, Prometric, or at a affiliated school. So it's really important to kind of think about that. Like the spring is not going to be useful for most students because they've already kind of had their whether they've been accepted or not by March. It's really there just in case of for waitlisted students or someone who has a special circumstance, late application, the family's moving to DC, it was the unexpected job shift, right? I can see, especially in the DC market, someone getting pulled into the main office. But that's not going to be for most students' testing timeline. So it's important to make sure to test in fall and then to leave that winter for a second test. So the structure is a little bit different. The IC also has a verbal. It is a little different in that it has the synonyms that are similar, but also it does sentence completions where it's like, you have a sentence and a blank. So there's no analogies on there. I would say that, comparing the SSAT to ISE, the verbal section on the IC is easier for sure. They are words that a student should have, where the SSAT is really trying to find holes in someone's vocabulary. There is a quantitative section that is a mix of kind of some logical based math questions, so kind of word problems or things that are trying to test your problem solving on there, and then what they call quantitative comparisons, which is where you have 2 quantities and it's asking you which one's bigger, or are they the same, or are you're not sure. And then that might sound really easy, but if you're dealing with variables, that if one's x squared and one's x cubed, which one's bigger? Well, we don't know, because they could be negative numbers, they could be decimals, they could both be 0, that kind of thing. And so that was on the SAT 25 years ago, but is still on the ISEE. Then there's a reading comprehension section. It's short passages. It's unlike the SSAT, which has may have passages going back to the Victorian age. The reading on the ISEE is pretty forward. It's just passages telling you about stuff. I think that the reading is quite easy on this one. The math achievement is not. The ISEE does try to test that limits of a student's math. And so from the 8th grade test, you'll see some trigonometry or matrices show up there. They're really trying to thin out that top of the curve in terms of mathematical knowledge. So if we're making a comparison between SSAT and ISEE, I would say the SSAT is more challenging on the language arts, reading and verbal, and the ISEE is more challenging on math. I think that's a good structure. And then there's the same thing, essay, it's also unscored. It's sent to the schools. So the ISEE has its own little setup. It's important to recognize that ISEE has no guessing penalty, so you should answer all questions, even if running out of time. And there, for the SSAT, I would not do that. There's a scaled score. It's on this very weird scale, 760 to 940. No idea how they came up with that one. It doesn't. It's very different than anything else I've seen. And then that but it's mostly percentiles. And then they also provide a standardized score. And the way thing of a standardized score is basically taking percentiles and then kind of simplifying down to 1 through 9. It is not a kind of scale where the 9 on a standardized does not represent 90th percentile and above, is actually 96 and to 99. So a lot of schools do use the standardized just because it's simpler, but do know that it's not a 1-to-1. It's not grouped into tens. It's its own sort of curved scale on there. So for strategies on there, main thing is get the planning for to take it once in the fall, once in the winter on there. As I said before, it's the ISEE is harder on math on there, and that if a student is trying to get a high score, they may have to put time into learning math beyond their grade level. Those advanced math questions are really kind of cursory in the sense of do you know what they're are you familiar with this concept? It's not if you know SOHCAHTOA, you can deal with the trig and stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit about the HSPT. This is used for Catholic schools in there. So it is it would only really apply looking for your Catholic parochial schools. And so it is typically offered at school in December, January. It has its own percentiles. As a total cognitive skills, and then that's it's mixing together verbal and quantitative, total basic skills, reading, mathematics, and language, and then a composite. The HSPT is the questions themselves are not very difficult, but it is a time test. We're looking at these for verbal. They're asking you their questions what is the synonym for this word, and the next question is which word is spelled incorrectly, and then the next question is fixing some some grammar of what verb tense, and then the next one's an analogy, and it's just it's all over the place, and you have very little time to answer. I mean, none of these questions take very long, but you have to go really quickly on there. I think that's the main challenge of the HSPT.
I don't know, maybe I'm contrary, but I love the HSPT as a test. I love tutoring it. I love taking it. I think I get bored very easily, so I love how it switches up on me.
Yeah.
It can really throw students for a loop for sure.
Right. It's just looking over, it's just whoa, that's a lot of different things.
Yeah, hard to get into a groove. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. Again, Pamela Tedeschi, president of Tedeschi Educational Consulting, offers all of these different wonderful services. And I know just listening to all the questions that you were asking about all of those different schools, Pamela, I was overwhelmed just thinking about all of the different factors that go into it. So I understand why families are seeking you out to make that process simpler. And Pamela has kindly offered this complimentary introductory phone consultation for anyone today who is interested in learning more. And as far as Applerouth goes, we've currently got our summer sale on, which has to end June 30th. And if you are interested in SSAT or ISEE or HSPT prep, this is the month to buy. You'll be able to save a lot of money on packages, and those hours never expire. So whether you're deciding to prep over the summer or wait until the winter, those hours are still going to be good. And if you're realizing just now that maybe you need to start working on your students' math abilities, we also offer academic tutoring as well. So in the time remaining, and we only have a couple minutes, but I do have some questions that some people were able to send ahead of time. So if you have any other questions, please drop them in the Q&A. But for right now, I've got some good ones. Let's see. Oh, this person seems like they're like me. They said that they're feeling a little overwhelmed by all of the private school options in DC and are just sort of wondering where's a good place to start? So I think that's a great question for you, Pam.
I think you could look up independent schools in the DC area on the web. Think about what's important to you or your child in the next school. You know, is it a particular subject area they're most interested in, or is it a sport they play, or is it a combination of several things? And then look at some of the websites and see if they offer some of the things your child is interested in.
Fantastic. Oh, this is a good one. What is a good, I'm going to put quotes around that. What is a good score on the SSAT? And I'll throw that over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that the parents want, but there isn't like an easy answer. Obviously, like the higher the percentile, the better. What you're not going to find is schools giving cutoffs. They're not going to say, oh, you must be at 85th percentile or above, or we're not interested. And the reason that they don't do this is that they're trying to build a and if they were to probably create a cutoff that was just explicitly you must have these scores, they may not have things like a drama department or a functional football team or something. And so that it's important to recognize that it's just one thing, and that it shows that you're good at testing, and that you have that you're a certain kind of intelligence that I think is only applicable for standardized tests and certain kinds of problem solving. But they're not going to say, oh, they want everyone of that skill set. But if we're looking at what a student's abilities are, right, and if and where you fit into that campus culture, whether it be athlete or musician or theater or debate or academics, is that you're not going to become a star football player in a couple of months. And you're not going to become a virtuoso violinist in a couple months. But for that SSAT score, you can put work into it, and in a short amount of time show improvement. And I think that's important to recognize that. So there isn't a good score is the score that gets you into your school, right? And I think that is a moving target for sure on there. But schools tend not to publish their mean percentile either. I think there's a assumption that, oh, I must be 95th percentile above in order to get into a school, but that probably is not the case.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. And this one is definitely for Pam. This parent is a little worried about their child's writing ability. I think they've had a tough time over COVID, and they're concerned. They're wondering, is there going to be a lot of writing, like an essay for the application, like for a college? Is there anything comparable that they need to be working on with their student?
There are essays on there, and I suggest that if the child has a lot of trouble with writing tutoring, they call you, Jenna, and get some tutoring, right?
What a great,
especially over the summer when you can, there's time to do that, and you could give homework for that.
Shout out to Matt, who literally wrote the book on our guide to writing wonders.
Yeah, we do have a nice little guide that we were able to put together if someone's looking for a structured.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Pam, as you were saying, you think summer is a really good time to start thinking about that?
sure, when the child has some extra time. The other thing is there's going to be a lot of writing in high school, no matter where you go. And if you're going to an independent school, there's going to be even more writing because the teachers have more time to work on that with the kids. And they're going to need it for college and beyond. And we all communicate using the internet and emails. You've got to be able to get your ideas across. So really, this is a good time to work on that. And, there's a lot of different activities you could do to improve that. I'm sure some of them are probably in Matt's book. I have not, I'll be honest, I have not read that yet.
All right.
Well,
Yeah, I'm sure your writing is fine, Pam.
Yes, I've read your writing, Pam. I think you're spot on. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you again to our panelists, Pamela Tedeschi and Matt Kiesner. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.